Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. So we finally know the changes for 9.20. Some of these are a little bit different. Some of these have been added to as well. We have a bunch of nerfs, a bunch of buffs, and then some updates and mini reworks in here as well. If you remember, 9.19 is the world's patch, so that is what we're playing on live servers right now. 9.20, even though it will be live during the world's period, it won't be what the pros are playing on. So that's why some of these changes are a little bit different. Let me know what you think of these, but just to say very quickly to start with as well, there was one change to Rengar, which has now been removed. So he was going to get buffed, and they were trying to buff him for lower ranks pretty much, but they doubled his W healing from monsters to 100%. The idea was that you will be able to run around the jungle a little bit easier. You wouldn't take as much damage, so you can gank, and it'll be a bit harder to kind of invade Rengar, I guess, and the early levels would be a bit simpler, which for lower ranks would be better. The thing is, Rengar is actually pretty strong already right now, especially higher up as well. So what they're going to do is they're going to wait for him to be worse in general before they do this buff properly. First things first, let's go into our nerfs. There are 3 here, 2 popular champions that are pretty strong at the moment, but they're all relatively small. So Garen is first up. Her Q base damage has been lowered to 60 to 160 from 80 to 160. It is a lot of her damage, especially early, but it just basically makes her a weaker lane phase, and that's pretty much it. You max this first, so by level 9, you won't even really feel it anymore at all. In general, she is a bit too strong on a good player, but also, like, you think the skill gap with her is pretty high. Like, she can be absolutely useless as well as absolutely insane. It seems to be no middle ground. She's either like crazy good or crazy bad. That depends a lot on the player. So the idea of this is basically, as an assassin, weaker lane phase, more time to punish her before she gets level 6 and that crazy ult. Another one that is really good in the lane phase is also getting nerfed. So Pantheon's Q base damage has been lowered to 75 to 215 from 75 to 235. I think this one makes a little bit more sense because the early lane phase is going to be the same, which is supposed to be pretty strong. That is exactly why you pick Pantheon in the first place. After that though, it's going to be 20 less damage. It doesn't sound like a lot. It isn't massive really, but it will slow him down just a little bit. It's going to affect his wave clear as well as his poke as well as his all-in damage. So it's hitting all 3 and in general should bring him down just a little bit. Last of our nerfs is going to be to Blitzcrank. So base armor lowered to 40 from 44 and arm per level lowered to 3.5 from 4. They're making him easier to fight and to kill, which is going to be good, right? Mostly I think as well from auto attacks or AD carries in general, since it's all armor and not magic resist, which is where your mages come in. The range buff on his Q though is so good, and nobody can judge it properly right now, so he ends up getting so many more kills, like way more fed than before. It doesn't seem like Riot want to change that. They don't want to go back on their buff, so we might just have to really wait, I guess, wait it out. Like, Blitz is going to be really good for now while people can't really judge it. For the rest of the season, probably, while people adjust, and then slowly people will get used to playing against it. Let's go into our buffs before we go into our reworks and our updates, which are probably the biggest things, or definitely the biggest things of this patch. First things first is a change to Locket. So the shield has been increased to 130 to 300 from 45 to 300, which is based on level, but it is actually up a ton to start the game. Remember that Locket scales with bonus health, so it isn't designed at all to be picked up early. It's best like when you already have health from other items. I guess now if you do need the shield, then you can do, and it's not going to be as bad. I really still doubt though tanks are going to buy this before Zeke's or Knight's Vow, but when they do finally get it, it's going to be a bit of a bigger shield. Ivan is another one. This one's pretty small, but his auto attack range is now actually ranged permanently. It's 475 from 125. It is something they've been planning for a while. It's kind of a small change-ish, but it will have a decent effect. It will help him use red buff, for example, a little bit more and not rely on his bushes as much. As far as I'm aware, they are still planning some more major work, but that is probably going to wait till the preseason for now. Lissandra is probably getting the biggest buff of the patch here. I'm not counting like any of the updates or anything. So armor is slightly up, passive AP ratio up 20% and WAP ratio up 20% as well. The passive AP ratio are the zombies, by the way. So each of them will use 20% more, and it could actually be a fair like increase in damage considering it's AoE, so it can hit multiple people, and it could chain into more than one per fight as well. Your W is really looking at like her all-in damage. I'm letting her use more AP when she goes for the big kill play, and it roots someone as she dives in. These buffs do have like some sort of synergy, and they do kind of play off each other a little bit as well. Like when you dive in, you should get the kill a little bit easier with your W buff, and then your passive buff is going to kick into effect with the zombie that you produce. The last buff we have is a very simple one to Varus. So his AD is going to go up 2 and mana regen up slightly as well. Now I love Varus. I'm not sure these will be enough to do it, but AD is so good for AD carries because it's for every single auto attack. It helps you CS better, and you use it for abilities as well. If you think back as well, if you remember that Caitlyn and Jhin had an AD increase, and those two suddenly became pretty good. They were good anyway, where Varus isn't kind of, so it's a bit different, but it can actually have an effect. The mana regen will be better for trading in lane, but it's pretty minor. It's actually very hard for Riot to buff Varus at the moment, because as soon as he's mildly good, pro teams abuse the nuts out of him, so they can't really. Let's go into our 3 updates. So we kind of have 2 mini reworks ready to Shaco and also to Garen, and then we have like a mini update to Viktor. Starting with Viktor, the first thing we can look at is the Q scaling on his shield has been changed to 30 to 115 based on level, and 15% of your AP from 8% of your maximum mana. The next thing is your W when it's augmented, which is really big by the way, is your direct spell hits now slow enemies by 20% for 1 second, but it doesn't work with the ultimate ticks. Your ultimate now though will actually chase people after Viktor dies, which is nice, and there's a new part that can move over terrain over walls. It ticks every 1 second down from 2 seconds, and it ticks 6 times instead of 3 to kind of compensate, but the damage per tick has been halved to match that as well. The augment bonus move speed is up 5% to 25%, but this actually makes a reasonable difference if you actually did want to upgrade it. So as an example, if you have 500 AP, it'll be close to about 200 health shield each time you use your Q now, which is pretty good, but I don't think there's really like a ton of change. It's just saying that you don't need to build any mana to really make it good. Honestly, the really big thing, the huge thing about this is now getting a built-in Realize on your W upgrade. This is so crazy. It is so good. Like, Realize slow is exactly the same as well, by the way. It is 20% for 1 second. Viktor actually built Realize anyway because it meant that his ultimate would be more likely to hit. You could kite people around properly and set up a lot of other stuff from the laser slow, like, which is really long range. What it's doing is basically freeing up an item slot to go for something else. It saves you 2,600 gold in your build. Like, obviously, Realize gives other stats and stuff, but you can use that gold to go for something else now. As an example, that something else could be Leandry's. That's going to work in the same way with the synergy. You only need that 1 item to still have the synergy with the burn doing more because that person is slowed. Your ultimate in general is going to be way better though. It can go over walls, which is really good. It ticks more frequently, even though it's going to be about the same damage. Actually slightly more AP ratio over the duration, which is nice. The thing is, it makes it much harder to dodge the damage now. And I honestly think these are really good changes for Viktor. The one thing it does not do at all is it doesn't fix his power up time in the lane phase while waiting for the upgrades and the augments in the first place. It will make it more worth it, so it's more worth the risk, I guess, when you reach a mid to late game and 2 to 3 items, so it is still kind of like a scaling mid laner. Now, I don't really think that's a rework, but the one to Shaco definitely is going to be at least a mini rework. Some of this is going to be the same, but just to start with his passive, basic attack damage from behind is increased and it can crit as well, and your E also does more damage from behind a target. Your Q stealth duration has been adjusted to 2.5 to 3.5 from 1.5 to 4.5, so it starts a bit higher but ends a bit lower, and the cooldown has also been changed. The cooldown is lower in general, but it's no longer reduced by triggering the damage, and the damage has actually been changed as well, but it can crit and it will crit for 130% damage when striking from behind. One of the biggest things about this rework though is your W, the boxes, now fires at all nearby targets. It fears non-champions for 2 seconds and it still deals 50% damage to turrets. Your Shiv, your E, is now going to deal magic damage instead of physical, which is also really big, and the damage has been changed a little bit, so it's a higher base but lower ratios. The XQ damage is also a bit different, so it's now a 50% bonus on targets below 30% health, for instead of 0 to 50% increase based on their missing health. Your ultimate has also had a pretty big change here, so your boxes from your clone trigger immediately now as soon as they spawn, but to compensate, the damage is going to be lower both with the ratio and with the base. So everybody and their grandma has been playing AP Shaco with this update on the PvE, and for pretty good reason, honestly. Your boxes are AoE now, so it's nuking multiple people in teamfights, and your ultimate clone can deal some huge amount of damage. The boxes triggering instantly is kind of game-changing. It fears everybody around, and it deals a bunch of damage. Even farming in the jungle is going to be better now as well, because the boxes deal damage to everything, but most importantly, the single target is still the same, so the big one dies just as fast, but the smaller ones die quicker. I actually think this is a really good set of changes. It's cleaned up a lot of messy areas around his kit. It's made it easier for Shaco to do his job and made it easier to know where his damage actually comes from. The only thing with all of this that might be kind of bad is that for AD Shaco especially, the ratios are worse, so in late game you won't be using as much of all the AD you have from items. You probably won't be able to one-shot as easily, especially considering as well your E is now magic damage instead of physical, so it won't benefit from any lethality that you have or your last whisper. We also have a mini rework for Garen, but this isn't going to be quite as big, I don't think, as the Shaco changes. So the main part about his passive is that it's no longer stopped by jungle monsters anymore, but it no longer doubles at lower health either. And the regen has been adjusted to 1.5 to 10.1%. I don't know why it's 10.1%, but that's what it is. Maximum health per 5 seconds from 2 to 8, so it should be healing for a little bit more. Your Q now works more like a basic attack with attack speed, and that's going to be important because his E now scales with attack speed as well. Your W resists now maximum of 30 from 50, so that's a bit worse, but the active now grants a shield for 10% maximum health and 60% tenacity for the first 0.75 seconds. As we said, your E, your spin damage now scales with attack speed, so it is 7 ticks plus 1 per 17% of attack speed from 5 to 10 ticks. Your damage has been adjusted to compensate for that, and it now doesn't deal bonus damage to an isolated target, but plus 25% to the nearest enemy. You're going to need 6 stacks to shred armor from 4, so a little bit more, but it now also grants stacks of Conqueror while you're spinning. Finally, with the ultimate, they've removed the villainy passive system, and it also grants vision of the target for 1 second, so it can't be dodged with vision anymore. The damage has also been lowered, but that is because it now deals true damage to everybody instead of dealing magic damage and true damage to that villain target. I honestly feel like Trinity Force is kind of going to be core on him now as well because of the attack speed on that you're actually going to use properly. It's probably going to become like his first item in pretty much every build. There is no mention of the on-hit effects this time though, so Blade the Ruined King and stuff won't be applying like it did in another version of the PB if you watched that video a while ago. One really big point though is that it does give stacks of Conqueror now, so you can start a fight and then this will proc it and it will start to heal you and deal true damage, which I think is such an insane change. That alone is going to be huge. That is such a big deal. Like, we also get a big shield when you fight with your W that scales well into the game since it's maximum health. So you have really good synergy with stuff like Serix. It opens up tank builds with like Warmogs and stuff, but it opens up more damage builds as well because of the E change. That is our last change for 9.20. As you can tell, like the changes are a little bit smaller, I guess, apart from the updates that we have coming in, which will be a pretty big effect for those specific champs. Let me know what you think of the changes, and let me know if you want to see like any more in-depth stuff about these reworks, like maybe a video kind of going over them properly or how it really changes their playstyle maybe in game. But thank you for watching until the very end of the video, and for now, I will leave you with robots.